Are we live? Are we live? I think we are live. We are. The red light's on. Tom's sort of on. Both of them, sort of. As on. I think they're as on as they'll ever be, aren't they? And we're on. We're on too. Oh God. Yes. So we're back. We're back in 2025. Myself here and Garry back in with a low light. I was going for a relaxed pub in the middle of the day look with this background, but it looks more like an illegal drinking establishment, doesn't it, Garry?
It looks like the those sort of places you went to back in the day during the whatever it was called. You know, when they banned drinking in the US and people set up their own places.
Oh, the prohibition. Yeah, a speakeasy.
Yeah, yeah. You look like you've got your own little sort of gin or whiskey den going on. The card game in the background.
Oh, it's a bit early. It's a bit early even for me. Never mind a speakeasy. This is going to be a bit of a geek easy this time, Garry, and our first catch up this year too. I mean, is it too late to say Happy New Year? How long can we keep that going for, do you think? What's your cut-off point?
Do it. Yeah, cut-off point for me, for colleagues and acquaintances, is probably 2 weeks. But for friends such as yourself, then probably 3 months. So Happy New Year,
April, May. Happy New Year to you as well, mate. Yeah, I was saying before we jumped on, because we just sort of quickly reconnected before, but I was off doing bits and bobs over the weekend, sort of little bits here, little bits there. But you were at the theatre proper, weren't you, on a proper night out, tuxedo and the full thing?
Yeah, proper night out. It's I've not been to a musical or a theatre on the West End in years, so it was good to me and my good lady wife. We decided to have a bit of a date night now that the kids are a bit older and we can leave them overnight, and you know it's always nice. So. Yeah, we went to see Hamilton, which is that's a great. Anyone that's seen it, you'll agree it's a great show. If you've not seen it, then
I've seen the poster. It's got a big star on it, but other than that, I couldn't.
yeah. It's like a retelling of the old US forming of the Constitution and a particular character, as the namesake would suggest, and his involvement and how that all got going and his ups and downs and stuff. But yeah, it's done in a very unique way. It's a very modern musical, very hip hop based and. Mixed race people of colour in the cast and everything. So yeah, it's very, very cool from that perspective. But yeah, just great show.
Yeah, I think I've seen a clip from it. People jumping and jiving around, kind of. What's that? Ashley Banjo and his mates. What are they called when they sort of jump over one another's back and things like that? Oh yeah, those guys. You know, Britain's Got Talent initially. They go up like in a big pyramid, don't they? There's about 12 of them, and there's one little lad. Mind you, I say little lad, he's probably about 30 now as well. But when they first came out, this one little kid was just sort of rolling around in mid-air. Where does he do that? Amazing stuff. You got to get down, behave yourself. But no, anytime. It's just my default setting now. Rolled up newspaper. Well, yeah, I mean, as you say, like time without the kids is good to take off the parental hat for a little while and to chill out. I mean, if you can't geek out, but like I said, you can't have it all your own way, can you? But you were there. You did some geeky stuff as well while you were down there, didn't you?
I did, yes. So it was a good weekend actually. So I spent Friday and Friday night with the wife, and then she came home on Saturday morning, and then I made my way over to the BFI over at South Bank for the screening of Spearhead from Space. So they do these events at the BFI to coincide with the imminent release of the next Blu-ray collection set. So we know that the next one's Series 7, Season 7, the Pertwee, his first season. So they did Spearhead. So that was really good.
They've kept us waiting for sort of news on that, haven't they? Because it got leaked, didn't it? Which I think we all knew which season it was, probably about September. But then the announcement got leaked just before Christmas. And so they've only just sort of started to start the publicity proper, which would usually be about this time of year, wouldn't it?
It would be, yeah, because they typically release around March, April time. So round about now, yeah, as we kick into February, they'll start to do like little teaser snippets and some other bits and bobs on the social channels. So yeah, it's normally about now. But it did leak though, you're right though, it was a bit of a kerfuffle, wasn't it?
It's always a kerfuffle. It's non-stop kerfuffles where Doctor Who's concerned, though, isn't it? Yeah. I mean, you think... I don't know, because how I feel about this time of year is like with Christmas and New Year in the rearview mirror, and a couple of months at the very least. We don't know when the new stuff's coming, but we know something's coming later this year. And there's that sort of long gap where kind of the fans, we're left to make our own amusement, shall we say. And usually it goes one of two ways, doesn't it? It's either complete wall-to-wall arguments for months and months on end, or somebody does something sort of really, really ridiculous and everybody jumps on it, which is, I think we're getting a bit of both. Somehow we're getting a bit of both right now. But I do always refer to this as Doctor Who silly season. And, I don't get me wrong, Gary, I like being silly. I mean, anybody who's seen hours worth of this stuff will attest to that. But some of the things that come out and that people say just blows your mind.
Silly, yeah. So silly season, I agree with you. Silly season is definitely a thing within Doctor Who fandom. And it normally doesn't. It normally happens, doesn't it, around this time, as you say?
Yeah.
And then we also get another bout of it as soon as the season finishes. So if we look at season 2, that's going to land, we think, at some point next month, potentially, maybe April.
Oh, could be. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, of course. My guess would be like as soon as Easter's done, whenever that is.
Yes. So as soon as that's done, the silly season kicks off again with that, because then you go through that whole weeks and weeks or months, it feels like, of saying, some fans saying Doctor Who's cancelled, other fans saying it's all good, other fans saying they're not bothered either way, and then, like you said, there's pretty much that expression from the naysayers. Yeah, but what a picture. Yes, it's silly season is definitely a thing, mate. At least twice a year. Yeah,
it's kicked in. I mean, I'm so silly. It's definitely affecting me. I've forgotten to do this. Yes, welcome back to the channel, everybody. At the start of another week, this is very much this is our way of easing you back into your geeky week, really. Although the adult world has started turning. And a lot of people would have clocked on at 9 o'clock, whether you actually have to travel into work or whether you work from home remotely. However you work, you've probably had to start adulting already. And myself and Gary here, we're here to remind you that needn't be the end of the world after all.
Boo, adulting.
Yeah. Okay. Get back, Starmer. Get back. Yes, so obviously the last time I saw you was before it all aired. And, you could say there was an embarrassment of riches over Christmas and New Year this year. I mean, how much of this did you see? There was the War Games in Colour, was the Doctor Who concert thing, the special itself and Confidential. Did you feast on all of this, or did you sort of just cherry pick a little?
I think I cherry picked some of it. Well, most of it, if I'm being honest with you. The only thing that I really wanted to check out. The only thing that I was really wanting to check out was the War Games in Colour. Yeah, that was like a must watch for me, I guess. The Christmas special, I didn't really set aside a time with the family and say, right, okay, at this time we absolutely are watching Doctor Who. I just thought, I'll catch it later in the day or the next day or something. And the same with the concert. Was that the Doctor Who proms that was played? Yeah. Same for that. I mean, I'm a bit biased because I was at that prom, so I Adam was telling me. Yeah, I mean, the thing with that, I've got to be honest, I think it was on for about 2 hours. I think I've got about an hour and a quarter in, and I never went back to it. Oh! But I've watched Wallace and Gromit, what was it called? The Vengeance Most Failed, about 8 times. That was so good, mate. Honestly, that was a highlight of my Christmas day. I don't typically watch a great deal of television on Christmas Day these days, but that was a real highlight for me. That was such a good story. Love that. And that picture's brilliant. Who did that?
I have absolutely no idea.
No idea. That's great.
I've got a note of it somewhere. Yeah. I make a point of doing as little preparation for this as possible now. But and as the weeks have gone on, I mean, the Wallace and Gromit thing, I think initially it was Gavin and Stacey that had won the TV ratings, as they say, but now it's Wallace and Gromit that's come out on top, isn't it? It's people are just watching it on a loop.
I believe so. Yeah, I think. Mind you, though, I think there was something that came out afterwards, a few days later, to say that the viewing figures, not that they're that important these days, but I think they were higher than Strictly for the first time in a few years. for Doctor Who.
For Doctor Who. Yeah, Doctor Who didn't do... I've said this before. I mean, Doctor Who... I get a bit of grief for this. I don't think Doctor Who did too badly at all. As regards the TV landscape, I think that broadcast television has a ratings problem. Doctor Who probably has a ratings problem, but it has other problems that are way, way bigger than its ratings, is how I look at it.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, like I said, I think the rating side of things is a bit... I think that's already... I don't want to use the word irrelevant. I'm not sure. I guess they are relevant to a degree. Yeah, but...
if they weren't relevant, they wouldn't bother recording them at all.
Exactly. Yeah, that's my thought. Yeah, so I think... they're not irrelevant yet, but they certainly don't. They're not as important to.
They're not make or break
the overall success. Yeah, like you said, the make or break of an episode or a series. But it's good to see though, because I think Strictly normally rules the roost, typically on the BBC for that sort of stuff. So good to see it. Although your feelings on the Christmas special aside, whether you liked it or not, or thought it was good or bad, it's still good to see who.
Because that's a different argument, isn't it? Whether it appealed to any of us subjectively or not.
Oh yeah, that's a completely different argument. That one, but
he was happy. But then again, he's always happy, isn't he? Yeah, and this is the lay of the lay of the land here. This is how it worked out. So I said on a previous thing, if somebody was to show me this, and this was just on the day Doctor Who went up to number 4 in the finish. So even on the day, this is. It's pretty good. I think, particularly if you take the numbers away, I think, well, it's not too bad.
I could be wrong, but and my memory is always a bit fuzzy, as you know, but I don't remember Doctor Who doing this well on the old Crimbo specials previously. I'm pretty sure it got beaten by always EastEnders, always Strictly, or something else as well that used to be on, that used to be above that as well. So not too shabby, really.
Yeah, so always room for improvement. But you think if that many, if you get in, let's say it's broadcast TV that's got the problem. I don't know how to solve that. That's why that's their job. I'm glad it's not my problem. Really, I just sit back and talk about it and be a smart ass.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, that's our assumed position before and after the stream.
Default setting. Yes.
Yeah, no prep, no research, just we'll wing it, whatever.
Well, I say no prep. I mean, I have been messing around because although it's sort of silly season, I thought let's give things a bit of a refresh, bit of a new look. And I thought, well, it's we've got a nice vibe going on here. We've got people in the live chat already. They were streaming this to Rumble and to YouTube and to X as well this time. So there's more people listening to this guff than ever, believe it or not. Nice. And I thought it'd be nice to give them something new to look at. So I thought, well, let's pep things up a little bit. And I thought, well, what would be nice and warm, sort of inviting, would be AI representations of you and I to welcome to welcome people. So I was messing around, and I sort of went over to the old onto the Grok thing, and I put sort of the general thing, and I come out with this. This was so it could be better, it could be worse, but I thought, well, it has the look of it as it's the sort of the disgruntled boy band members, sort of, the manager never called me back and took all my money, and now I'm skint and pissed off. Crying into my pint. So that was the nearest I could get, really. But what do you think about the rise of the AI? Because all this stuff's everywhere at the moment, isn't it? And, I've been using it as well and playing with it and things.
Just AI in general, you mean?
Well, yeah.
I use it for my job. I use it for my job sort of sparingly at the moment. I imagine I'll have to use it a bit more as time goes on, but... I don't know. I think on one hand, it's very, very cool. Like for me, if I'm working up content for something or a base outline for, something I want to do in terms of a new project, a design project or something like that, then it's really good at getting me to like 75% of the way. And then I can go in and tweak it and improve it and correct it and all that stuff. So in terms of just general content creation, it's been very cool for me. I can see the trepidation in it, though. I can see why people are a little bit, sort of on the fence with it. Because you have a lot of people who are fearful of their jobs, of course. that this is going to remove people from their roles and all that stuff.
Me too. It's affecting my profession.
Yeah, mine's. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so that's why I'm using it more and more, because I want to be one of those people that, when the time comes to move companies or jobs or promotion or whatever it might be, reviews and stuff, I think you want to be one of those guys that are like, okay, you not be left behind. Like, he knows how to wield AI as a tool rather than be replaced by it as a function. That kind of thing. You don't want to be like a caveman looking at fire for the first time. Exactly. Yeah, and there's been quite a few. We could wax on our industries a bit more in depth for hours, I think, Dan. But I think I've certainly seen a lot of people that have given talks to say when the internet was first introduced and when email and all design tools and stuff, you want to be the guys at the beginning of the curve. You don't want to be coming in at the end. So that's my view on AI. Yeah. I think it's cool, but I also see the problems it presents for people. But yeah, it can solve all kinds of issues and all kinds of problems. Do you think actually
and they use it to restore various archive TV as well? Yeah. I was going to say, on this subject, do you think we'll see? Because in the past with Doctor Who, especially in the modern era of Doctor Who, we've seen it quite a bit in Jodie's era and now in Nshuti's, but we have this kind of not on the nose, or sometimes on the nose, but this kind of political underpinning to certain stories where the Doctor's almost talking to the viewer directly about how much you've effed the planet up, and how much you've made a mistake. Rampant political proselytizing.
Yeah. Do you think we're going to see a story coming up about AI and all that stuff? Because it's
probably
like the Doctor's probably seen it or would have seen it, and its ultimate end game, if you like, thousands of years in the future.
Because Doctor Who is showrun and sort of run generally by people on the very, very far left, and very, very far left people really, really hate AI and anything of that description generally. So almost certainly it'll be leapt on at some point. But of course, with the batch that we're going to get at some point later this year, all of this stuff was filmed a year ago, written probably 2.5 years ago. So it's well behind the curve, even for Russell T Davies in his present, because Russell's so out of touch right now. It's ridiculous. But he's also a couple of years behind the here and the now, where the needle is. That's the expression, isn't it? So I wouldn't expect to see it necessarily like now, but it'll be bleeding through at some point in the future whenever there's going to be more content. It's ripe in the same way that the Kerblam satirized Amazon to some extent, how ubiquitous Amazon had become by 2018. It was 2018, 2019, that was screen. Mm-hmm. So I think, and even so, we'd had Amazon at that point for about 5 years. I do love it when Doctor Who does that kind of thing, but our show does tend to do it after everybody else. It's not really cutting edge in that respect.
Yeah. No, I read you. No, I can just envisage it coming at some point down the pipe, some kind of... Because I think we've seen that to some degree in a lot of stories about AI, but it's just not called that. It's like they'll label it as some kind of thing,
Because the cyber controller is an artificial intelligence, isn't he? Or isn't it, I should say, in many respects. Yeah. And you could say, I mean, I don't suppose the great intelligence really counts, because the idea is it's a kind of life form, isn't it? But even so, there's certain sorts of trappings, I think, to various Doctor Who creations that touch that connect with it, or at least the way that it makes human beings feel.
Yes. Yeah. I think that's. I think the writers try and do that in a way that's that comes across as very humane and everything, and the Doctor always saving the day and all that stuff. But I don't know. It's a weird one. I think. Like, even in the classic years, we've had a few stories about computers and being intelligent and all that stuff. I'm just wondering if the writers are going to go a bit deeper with the political side of it. Because, with the whole Elon Musk being involved more heavily in politics.
Oh, they'll certainly be villainising him at a later date. He'll be mocked. as if he'll care. You know what I mean? What any TV show, as kids, as if we say, big wow. I'm sure he'll sleep fine that night. I was thinking, does Wotan count as an AI, do you think, from the War Machines?
I would say so, yeah.
Yeah, it would do.
I would say, yeah.
So that's 65. Anything before that? Can't think of anything.
Well, you could... no, I don't think so.
Because that was the first story where they went back to contemporary Earth, was it?
Yeah,
that can't be right.
London. That was London, yeah, because they didn't Polly get dropped off at the end of that story?
That's right, yeah. Because they didn't really go there in the chase, because it was just Ian and Barbara got dropped off there. Planet of Giants doesn't really count because they were stuck in a sink or whatever they were. They didn't get much time to do anything. They're worrying about ants and blades of grass and things like that. So it doesn't really count.
Yeah.
That's scary. God, this is getting deep for a Monday lunchtime, Gary, isn't it?
Yeah.
And for silly season 2, we should be wearing funny hats or something, shouldn't we? We've got people listening in the live chat and commenting along as well. We've got Darren here from the Darren Zone there. Good afternoon, both, says Darren. Hello, mate. Good to see you. And an afternoon, chaps, from Rob Alexander. Rose Kirby's into with hi, good morning, afternoon chat. Dan, Gary, happy 3rd of February. 3rd of February. No.
3rd of February. It's February already.
Speeding by. Rob says he's looking forward to the Season 7 Blu-ray release. Binge Season 6 in the lead up to watching War Games in both variations over Christmas. Oh. Roll on Spearhead. That's the beauty, isn't it, of Season 7. Only the 4 stories. So you can sort of rip through them, really. I'm looking forward to that coming out. We haven't got a date for the set yet, have we?
We haven't, no. It's March some point. It's normally the last week of whatever month it's going to release. So probably the 20-something of March, I'd say. Yeah.
I did see some pictures from the BFI over the weekend. I was surprised because I thought, well, I don't remember seeing this announced. But then again, I never see them announced.
Oh, yeah. They sell out really quickly as well. Yeah. So I think if you're a BFI member, then you get, I think it's like an extra day or an extra block of hours or something before it goes on general release to bag your ticket, and I think 90% of them go in that bit, and then when they go on general sale, they're all nabbed up really quick, so you have to be quick on the buzzer, as it were.
Straight at it, yeah. Right on it. PD Richards in the live chat and says the Christmas special would have probably worked much better if Moffat was given the book. I mean, it did look a bit cheap, didn't it? The actual Christmas special, Joy to the World.
It was a story of two halves for me, mate, in terms of how it looked. I think some of the physical sets and the things that they had built, like the Time Hotel, and then and some other bits that actually looked pretty good. Like I like it when Doctor Who goes back to actual sets and that stuff. That looked pretty good, but some of the visual effects side of things look very ropey. Yeah, that was a bit
strange, isn't it? Yeah,
yeah. That did need a few more pennies thrown at it, that one.
A couple of quid more from behind the cushions of the sofa or something like that. PB Props is in the live chat too. This is Anthony, and asks, wasn't the face of evil all about a sort of AI? Also, hello.
The face of evil.
Was it?
Let's have a look. A split personality computer.
I suppose that does count because it developed another side to its personality, doesn't it? So probably counts.
We can count that as AI, I think. Yeah, defo.
Yeah, it's technology is a corrupting influence, Russell, isn't it?
Yeah, awesome, yeah. Do you know what? It's not to go too deep again, but old J.R. Tolkien was fearful of industry and technology. He warned us all back in the day that
was one of the themes. It's the same. I think that Frank Herbert felt the same way about when he was writing the Dune books, because a lot of that is about kind of not a resistance to technology as such, but a certain to be a suspicion in a similar way, and a kind of belief that in the same way that you think, well, how we eat. Generally speaking, it's better to eat as little sort of processed foods as we possibly can, and to keep something as close. There should be as few steps between some food a few sort of interventions along the way in between it being grown, for example, fruit or veg, and entering a human body. You know, it should have as fewer preservatives as possible, all those sorts of things. That kind of intervention into a natural order. I think that's how Frank Herbert felt. I think that's probably how Tolkien felt as well. He says, trying to sound like he's well read. I haven't read any of that stuff since I was about 18. I think that's just fantasy, science fiction. I mean, they do say there's only so many stories. Like, how many stories do they say there is? 4? Maybe 3?
What, of classic, the Dune stuff, the old classic?
General kind of. There's only actually 3 stories to just get told over and over again.
Oh,
the hero's journey's one, and
it just gets reused and recycled in some shape or form. Of course, it's probably 3 or 4 sort of key stories that launched it all, and then everyone else just like, I
don't think anybody does that better than Doctor Who either. I mean, I like the fact that I would say the classic series is more alive than ever, and the screenings and things like that, and the conventions. It all seems to. It does sell out really, really quickly, and like there's one-to-one get-togethers and things with Paul McGann or Tom Baker that our friend Ian Kubiak puts together, and limited in number and things like that. And I love the fact that they do that, those intimate little things. But the larger conventions too. I mean, I saw and bringing people out of the woodwork too, who haven't necessarily been in the Doctor Who world for years and years and years. I saw this last weekend. And this was from, I think it was Who at the Playhouse at Epsom. And this looks like a fun event, again, quite a small event. And there's a picture of a couple of the guests. So that's Sylvester McCoy. There's layering up. I think he's got about 5 layers on there. Good on you, Sylvester. Get it? Yeah. But that's Sarah Griffiths with him there. Looking radiant. And... So for the people who don't know who that is, that's Sarah Griffiths. She was in Delta and the Bannermen. She played Ray in Delta and the Bannermen, and she was the girl, wasn't she? Who it was believed it was a toss up between her and Sophie Aldred's ace in the following story as to who was going to take over when Bonnie Langford left. The regular cast was the thing. So I thought, well, Sarah Griffiths did this job all those years ago. Think about how much time has she really thought about it in the 37 years since? You know, but here she is at a convention with Sylvester McCoy, like nothing, like it was yesterday or something like that. I thought it was so sweet, and she looks great. I thought, generally speaking, I'm not really one for an older woman, but I think she looks absolutely gorgeous. I tell you what, I've also got a bit of a crush for the first time as well on Bonnie Langford too. So I don't know what it is. It's I think I've uncovered a bit of a fetish here. I think that's but it's a very narrow fetish, Gary. It's women, middle-aged women who appeared in Delta and the Bannermen. It's very, very narrow.
That's very, very niche. For that sort of thing, mate.
But they both look fantastic. I think, but isn't it wonderful though that people who were involved in Doctor Who all those years ago now can do stuff like this and be embraced? Just don't give me the chance, Sarah. To be embraced by fandom again though, and reconnect with Sylvester, and see that even over 2 or 3 episodes, somebody like Sarah can make a difference, make an impact in that role. Because I think she's going back to the part now of Ray on audio. I think that's what it is. It's connected to Big Finish in some way. She's back in the day. Yeah.
She was.
Heaven knows how they've worked that. Yeah, just a really sweet character. I think she got a lot of the things that Ace had got, but she was slightly softer. In many respects, I prefer the character. But in other words, I can't imagine Doctor Who history without Ace, though, and without Sophie Aldred. I mean, she's just fabulous person.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, and she was a good character in Delta. She was, I think you nailed it. I think she was very similar to Ace, but just a bit softer, not quite as brash and that sort of thing. But I think she would have made a good companion. I think, kind given her another few stories, it would have been cool. I think she was good, but. Yeah, with hindsight, you can't really say anything against Ace. Oh. She's just too iconic, I think,
where they're going to take the character on audio, because they've done some with Jessica Martin as Mags as well, haven't they? How much of the audio stuff do you listen to? Because I don't listen to as much as I'd like to.
Yeah, same. I dip in and out. The problem with me with audio stuff like that is when I'm working, I can't listen to podcasts or audio dramas because...
no, I can't either.
I find that's why when I'm working, 99% of the stuff I listen to are like film soundtracks and scores and TV and stuff like that. Because if I listen to spoken word, I'm working away and I always have to go back and rewind it 30 seconds because I missed. So it just frustrates me. So... yeah, I listen to them at the weekends and, every now and then sort of thing. But I used to listen to Big Finish a lot. And I still do, but just not as much as I used to.
So what I do is I grab a set. I've got loads of them on CD. Everything from, I'd say, up to about release of the main range to about 190, 190 I think I've got on CDs. And loads of the other stuff as well, just piles and piles of it. And lately, I've gone more for the sort of downloads and things like that. But most of my favourite stories are the ones on the CDs. And I mean, I suppose I could. If I've bought the CDs, am I entitled to a free digital copy from Big Finish? Maybe I have to ask them.
I think so.
I suppose I could rip it myself. But
when you purchase a new story from them, you can buy just the download, or you buy the CD plus the download, so you get both. So you should be able to download them. Yeah.
Nice. Times change even with that. PD Rich asks, didn't Stephen and Polly stay on Earth? Oh, you mean Ben and Polly?
Ben and, yeah, so that's what
in the faceless ones.
The War Machines. So at the end of the War Machines, they decided to stick around, didn't they? Not travel with the Doctor anymore. Yeah.
We've got, so Darren says, yes, Wotan was an early AI and a global computer network. Doctor Who was ahead of the curve there. Yeah, it used to be ahead, and now it's behind. RD Animation Films and Model Builds says hi RD. I'm just going to call you RD. What do the RD stands for?
Richard and the Deltas.
Richard Dawkins.
Richard Dawkins, maybe.
It's branching heads. Oh dear. Adrian says that Doctor Who dealt with AI robotics and warfare from the start. Near enough, I suppose, depending on how you view the Daleks and things like that. Cybermen more so, I suppose.
Of course, the Nestine consciousness as well. That's just one big sentient, well, not, you know what I mean? It's one big sort of connected network of intelligence that doesn't have a physical form until it attaches itself. So that could be viewed potentially as an...
it counts, doesn't it? It counts.
It's not electronic, it's not a computer, but it's still non-human intelligence. So potentially, maybe.
Mark's in the live chat too and says Sylvester McCoy, he likes Ncuti Gatwa. They're both Scots, aren't they? But he says he likes him because he no longer has the lowest rated series of Doctor Who. Well, yeah. Every cloud has a silver lining, Sylvester. PD Rich says he hasn't watched the War Machines in ages. I think we've all got some of those stories, haven't we, that we haven't looked at in a while. You know, just the ones that fall between the gaps in the pavement over the decades, things you haven't gone back to for ages. For PD Rich, it's the War Machines. It's probably about 34, because I have got favourites that I go back to over and over again. Let's watch on a loop.
Yeah, same. Yeah, I can't remember the last time I saw the War Machines though. Probably.
It's been a while for me too. 4
or 5 years, maybe 4 years.
A steak is a superfood, says Adrian. Is it?
Protein, mate.
It must be
protein there. Yeah.
I'm a vegetarian, so I don't know.
Oh, mate.
PB Props is in the live chat too and says, I've felt for a long time what's missing from the 2005 series onwards is it lacks a spirit that the classic series always had. It's got a different sort of spirit, I would argue. It's a different mix of the same beats. So I don't lacks the spirit. No, I don't agree with that. I think the 16, 17 years in between them just meant that things had changed, the mood had changed, popular culture had changed. But I don't agree with that. What do you think, Gary?
Yeah, I think it does have spirit, definitely, but it's just coming from a different place, isn't it now?
Yeah.
I think the classic years, especially up until sort of Tom Baker, I guess, those first three eras were very trailblazery, if that's a word, it felt like, and making lots of new ground and so on. So they always had that sort of, like somebody mentioned earlier, ahead of the curve in some respects. For certain.
Do you think it's because up until Star Wars came out in 77/78, before the impact was really felt, that sci-fi, despite the success of stuff like Planet of the Apes and Logan's Run and things like that, because they were blips, they weren't like sort of pop culture bombs going off, that Doctor Who and the 3 or 4 things that existed like it could sort of play, make their own way. They could cover their own ground, and they could experiment a lot more, because the boundaries in the minds of the general public as to what science fiction or fantasy could be perhaps hadn't been confined in any way or stamped on so firmly with a particular identity by a particular brand. Because something did change, didn't it, in the late 70s? Something changed. Because the 80s is my era, but it didn't have that which you have just identified. It did lose that in the 80s.
A little bit, yeah. It's the same for me as well. The 80s is my... I'm an 80s child, grew up in that era. So I know exactly what you mean. I think, unfortunately for sci-fi, I think it's always been a slow burn up until like the end of the 80s, probably. Mid-90s, it always felt like it was a very slow burn, but it had like these little springboards going up to it, because you had these sort of one-offs and these little mini successes in both TV and films. But like, films like 2001 and things like this were like these little tiny pockets of brilliance.
Like 69, yeah.
But they didn't really sort of make a movement out of it. It wasn't like the common sort of blockbuster stuff that we see now, but they were there, and then things like Star Wars came along and that springboarded it up a bit more, and then you went through, and then TV sort of caught up behind it. I think you're right. I think that sort of thing springboarded it, and then TV came up, and even up into the mid to late 80s. I remember when looking back on a documentary about Red Dwarf, where Doug Naylor and his writing partner they
Rob
tried
Grant.
to get Rob Grant tried to get Red Dwarf off the ground. And the first and biggest hurdle they came across was people saying nobody watches sci-fi, especially not a sitcom about sci-fi and all that stuff. So having to push through that and ultimately get it made, and it was a big success. And then that paved the way for another thing to come up behind it. So I think it's got this stair effect, this sort of steps up there. So, and Doctor Who kind of slots into those steps in between all that. If you know what I mean, it's like ahead of it at one point,
think you're right.
and then behind it another point, and then Doctor Who's very importantly been interwoven throughout those different steps as we go through sci-fi history.
And it helped that it could kind of softly reinvent itself. Actually, sometimes reinvent itself in a very hard way, but mostly softly reinvent itself to sort of gently move with the times in a way that shows like Red Dwarf couldn't, could it? I mean, I wouldn't describe Red Dwarf as a fad, but it had a time where it was really, I wouldn't say it was driving culture, but when it was one of the kind of 6 to a dozen shows on TV which were incredibly relevant, that even if it wasn't the case that everybody watched them, most people knew what they were, and elements from them started to enter into the kind of popular lexicon. But that can never, it's not sustainable for a prolonged period for 10, 15, 20 years. In the same, the last 10 years or so, in the way that Downton Abbey was, for example, and what would it be? I mean, what's the big thing? What's the big thing now? It's Bluey.
Bluey. Oh, I've seen a lot of people crying over the finale of that cartoon, strangely. Apparently it's very good. I've never seen it, but...
Yeah, it's fabulous. So my kids are all too old for it now. My little girl's too old for it. we've got the rabbi from the planet in the live chat says, yes, he says J&T's instincts were 100% on the money, going with Ace over Ray. So he was talking about Sarah Griffiths a moment ago. The 7-Ace dynamic is just perfect for the era. And it was, I think that even though Ace herself, I remember reading the character description for who she was going to be and thinking, really? And even the way that Sophie played it at the start, it was ever so slightly out of date. If it had been 84, 85, it really would have been ahead of the curve, but they just about got away with it. And because Sophie and the character expanded so quickly, they really developed in record time. They didn't hang about, and neither did Andrew Cartmore. They were able to sort of get up to speed with it. At first, it was a bit like, oh, really? Ace? Really? Because people had stopped saying Ace in 85. But the rest of the character was deeper than that, and they were able to go much further with it. Yes, but it was perfect for the era in hindsight. And now I think the Ace stuff is actually quite charming.
No, it's pretty cool. Yeah, she was a really good companion as well. Love that era. My fave Doctor from the classic era for me, McCoy.
Is it you as well? I seem to be meeting more people than ever who do count that era as their favourite. Because I was saying to somebody, when would it have been? About a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, I was saying how for a long time, because people were saying about the current era, about Shooty Gatwa, about how unpopular he is, or certainly that he hasn't caught the public's imagination, and how the love for the series isn't there, and this era will always be sort of quarterized, and the Whittaker stuff as well. I mean, I'd say the history books are kind of being written, and the dust is gathering now on that era, but they were including the Gatwa stuff in that. I think I don't necessarily think that the things that happen in the here and now are forever, because for a long time, Sylvester McCoy era, if you told a bunch of Doctor Who fans, a room full of Doctor Who fans, that you're a big McCoy fan, you would get a funny look. It's like people would slightly move away. Whereas now, Sylvester McCoy's season got announced on Blu-ray. Season 25 came out last year, didn't it? And the excitement, the fervour was just as much as it is for season 7. It's changed.
Yeah. It's a great set, that one as well. I think that season 25, I think that's my fave of all the box sets so far. Yeah. All the special features and the way it's done is
not really, that I think this is going to happen necessarily with the particularly the Whittaker stuff, but I could be wrong. I mean, I could be wrong just because I hate it so much. But you know what I'm saying? It's times do change, and I have to say, I think, well, as I always say, every episode of Doctor Who is someone's first, and that, I think the problem with the Whittaker stuff is that a lot of people simply left the fandom, or more to the point, left the audience, if not when she arrived, then pretty soon after she arrived. The people who came in and watched the Whittaker stuff and enjoyed it, or claimed they enjoyed it, and they stayed to the end of that era, and then they left. Some of them because they lost interest or reached the point where they weren't interested in the show anymore, or some of them left out of protest because the character wasn't to be played by a woman any further. So for them, as they get older, there will be a 3 or 4 period of their life where they watch that show a lot. So you see what I'm saying? It doesn't. I suppose why they came and why they left isn't necessarily important, but it could mean that later on in life they do reconnect with the material in some way. It just means that I bloody won't. I won't have to.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. There will be thousands of people that will go back to it in 20, 30 years' time and be like, oh, this is the nostalgia effect is now taken hold, you know, and they watch it through different lens than
never say never.
Yeah.
Michael Q is a fan of Planet of the Apes. It says here.
Oh, classic.
We mentioned Planet of the Apes earlier on.
The originals or the redos? I'm assuming Michael means the originals. I'm guessing.
I love it all. I love it all. A few Red Dwarf fans in the chat as well. We've got so Peter Rich says that Stargate Independence Day reigned in the sci-fi blockbuster, with Armageddon being the high-end SFX sci-fi movie. There was a time, wasn't there, in the movies where things event movies, tentpole movies, I suppose typified by Independence Day in particular in '96. That was huge. The stakes seem to be getting higher and higher and higher and higher on that stuff. And so looking back with hindsight, it's probably not that surprising that any serious attempt to bring Doctor Who back on a week-to-week basis never happened. Because that's not what Doctor Who's about, is it? It's not kitchen sink stuff, but it shouldn't necessarily be a huge MacGuffin that's the end of the cosmos every single time either, should it?
Yeah. No, sorry, no, it shouldn't be. And I do agree with you. It's afterwards took me by surprise, you crafty devils. We like to sneak up stealth mode. There's some comments in the chat which are quite interesting around the whole nostalgia thing and looking back on Whittaker's era and presumably Shute's era, and saying that, you know, those eras will never be fondly remembered, etc. One thing I will say though is that, I don't know if you were a Star Wars fan, Dan, but when the
up to a point I was.
when the prequel trilogy landed, that was criticised really heavily.
I remember,
especially the first two films, and I remember some friends of mine at the time who absolutely hated it and swore blind. You know, like, I will never watch Star Wars again. I absolutely hate this. You know, I'll never look back on this with fond memories or anything like that. And I'm just never going to happen. Fast forward to now, and they absolutely love those prequel films now. And once time had gone by a little bit, and, you know, you change a little. I'm not saying that that automatically happens to every person every time, but
I think things acquire a different perspective. And in that instance, you think, okay, they were successful in one respect, not successful in another. And so you think, well, so when with the hindsight, you think, okay, they were of a particular time, partially successful, and then you start to judge it on its entertainment value, and you think. And to be honest, when I'm reviewing anything, Gary, I mean, the very first question that I ask, isn't anything political or ideological. You know, should I support this? Should I even watch it? I think, well, I have watched it. The simplest question number one is, did I enjoy it? Whether it was for half an hour and a half, or 2 to 2.5 hour movie, did I enjoy that thing? And ask myself that question on a really sort of basic level, and give an honest answer as well, for better or worse. And then afterwards, try and work out, okay, so why did I enjoy it, or why did I not enjoy it? And try not to get sort of pulled into the, because obviously the culture war is, I think it's all sort of draining away, really. And I say woke is bleeding out, certainly, but the culture war is still going on, and everything is so heavily politicized that I really am making great efforts to move my personal viewing and my viewing habits away from that, so I can just enjoy things more on a surface level, or at least give them the opportunity to entertain me. Is how I've come to look at it now, and particularly with obviously the show I'd like to do that with the most would be Doctor Who, because it's tied to my own childhood in a way that it is to problem beings. He says, I'm on the money. Thank you, Lee. I was 12 when Ace appeared, and everyone my age thought she was cringe. It was like that.
Yeah. And also, when the majority of TV shows were filmed and then released months and months after they were filmed, so you're always going to be, you know, unless it's something that's filmed at the time and gone out partially live, things like Gladiators and stuff like that, of course, different. But Gladiators. But with Doctor Who back in the day, it was filmed, and then, you know, half a year later it's out the door, or 3/4 of a year later it's then released. So, of course, just by the very nature of TV production, things like Sayings in the Playground, you know, with Ace and stuff like that, it's always going to be behind. So, yeah, but you are on the money time. Yeah,
particularly with the BBC. The rabbi says the Whittaker era will never be fondly remembered. People didn't like it because they liked it. People liked it because Whittaker was a woman. You're absolutely right. 30 years from now, no one will even think about it. Well, they didn't 30 years ago. when Kate Mulgrew was leading Star Trek Voyager. Isn't it funny how things work out? This is silly season. It's also panto season. Thankfully, my kids have grown out of pantomimes. Heavens above. I've seen a few ropey ones in my time. None starring the cast of Doctor Who, I have to say. Although John Barrowman was a regular at the ones in Birmingham for years, wasn't he, John? He was in there, up there with the Crankies at the Hippodrome.
The Crankies.
They must be retired by now, surely.
They must be. Crikey! I mean, they looked old when I was a kid, so they must
Bless
be.
Them.
Yeah.
Adrian Sherlock says the more time goes by, the better things used to be.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, don't get me wrong. I think with Whittaker's era and stuff like that, there will absolutely be fans who will never like it for whatever personal reasons they've got for that sort of stuff. You know what I mean? That's the thing.
Yeah.
But I would say there is also a percentage of people that don't like it now, but if they rewatch it, say if someone in their 20s has watched it now and they're like, nope, not for me, don't like it, there will absolutely 100% be a portion of fans who will watch it in 20 years' time, rewatch it, and they'll be like, actually, it's not the best thing, but it's not as bad as I remember. It's not too bad. As crazy as that sounds, even if you're a staunch, not a fan of it, that will happen to a portion of fans.
So we were talking earlier on about silly season and how things people get bored and all these things. And one thing I've noticed as well about this time of year, over the last couple of years, is that the Whittaker era, generally speaking, is pretty much forgotten. Anything that happened during those 20 odd episodes, whatever it was, I think gradually, because the people who really liked it have gone. They're not in the fandom anymore. Everybody that's left behind either didn't watch it or several episodes sent me to sleep. I couldn't see what they're about. But in the last week or so, something has broken through, or something comes across as somewhat rude. Someone has broken through, and people are talking about Joe Martin again, the fugitive Doctor. And I mean, personally, I find the whole, and I don't mean the Timeless Children itself, but the whole conversation around the Timeless Children incredibly boring. It's a conversation I can't be bothered having anymore, Gary, you know? It feels like this was 5 years ago, the stuff with the Timeless Child. It feels like it was about 25 years ago. It had no broad impact on popular culture at all. It had no actual impact on the series itself, within the narrative, within the fiction. Of course, externally, in practical terms, it had a massive impact on the show, in that it eventually got it pulled off the bloody air. And, creatively, it sent the show into a brick wall. But there were so few people watching by that point and paying attention, it didn't really matter. But Jo Martin, who I've got a certain amount of time for, I think she seems like a nice enough woman. Jo Martin has been back in the media because her Big Finish stuff's just started being released. And it's been, I think it was recorded a little while ago. And I'm sure there could be a market out there for it. I don't know. It's not something I'm going to jump on. But it has brought this all back to the surface again, because Jo was interviewed by Doctor Who magazine, and she gave them this quote. She said, "All I know is that when I took the job, and they were trying to explain my doctor to me, I was told how it was going to work. I was told how it was going to work, that I was the first Doctor." So I was like, okay. But this idea that Jo Martin's incarnation of the Doctor was the original one, like predating Hartnell, this whole argument has raced its way back to social media again in the last 4 or 5 days. It's one, for me, it's so black and white. There's nothing to this at all. I think my take on it, Gary, and I'll ask you yours too, is that it doesn't really matter. Who I assume it was Chris Chibnall that told Miss Martin this, or it could have been the other co-writer of it. I don't know. He was a charmer, wasn't he? He was the one who went around swearing at everybody on Twitter, as it was. Do you remember him? I can't even remember his name now. Vile little man. But I'll assume it was Chris Chibnall. So it doesn't really matter what Chris said to Joe at the time, she had it in her head that she was playing whatever. As regards the history of the show, it's absolute bollocks. Because when you look back now, of course this character isn't the first Doctor. It's said multiple times in the series on screen before that Hartnell's incarnation is the first. It's also been now said afterwards too. So, and this is the classic series and the new series. So why the fact that people are still talking about? I mean, I don't blame Jo for starting this off again, because she wouldn't know. Why would she? She's got a life. She's got a life. She's got a career outside Doctor. Fair play to her. But it does mean that this comes back to the feeds again. So when you see stuff like this pop up, do you think, oh no, not again? Or do you kind of wade in? I mean, how do you feel about it?
Yeah, I mean, I don't wade into that.
Because people keep expecting me to have a new take on it, and I don't give a fuck. It might as well be 40 years ago.
Yeah, same. Exactly the same. Whenever I see this stuff, when it pops up on socials or Reddit or something like that, I'm just like, oh, here we go. Here we go. I think it's one of those things that people like to regurgitate to validate their opinion because people haven't heard it loud enough previously. So it's like, this is what I think about the Timeless Child and the Fugitive Doctor. And there's some discussion and they're not quite happy with that. So 6 months later, they'll ask the same question and they'll try and get the debate going again.
And it's always this time of year as well. I mean, you could say Big Finish had played into it by releasing the thing. If they hadn't have released it, would it have happened? But it is always this time of year. And even if I'm being mega generous, because I hated this, I really did. But even if I'm being mega generous, from looking at it from as a creative myself, they tried something. It failed really quickly and went down hard. Therefore, aren't we all better off just forgetting about this? Not necessarily forgetting about the actress; she's done nothing wrong, but the character, the story. If Big Finish can make a few quid selling stories about it, good luck to them. I'm sure they've done their market research. They'll know whether there's an audience there or not, and if they don't know, they're going to find out pretty quickly. It's not my problem. I don't have to listen to them. And I just feel that we're so far past this now, do you know? And to keep fixating on it, I'm happy that Joe Martin can still sign stuff for people and record, whatever they want to do with that character. If that character continues to exist within the fiction, it's fine. Fit her in somewhere else, but she's not the first Doctor, right? It's ridiculous.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think maybe they just meant, from a narrative point of view, on screen at that point, as the Doctor sort of goes back in history a little bit after finding out this bombshell about the Timeless Child.
I mean, you could say that character that Joe Martin plays believes she's the first Doctor. That's because David Morris's character believed he was the Doctor as well, but he wasn't. So it's one thing to say that to an actor and say, "Okay, what's your motivation? What's your motivation, darling?" We all know the cliche, the Kenneth Branagh thing. So maybe I don't know. It just isn't my problem. I just don't care.
Yeah, I think it's a tale of a few different threads. That whole thing. I think you've got Chibbers, who is trying his best to come up with something unique and different to inject into the show. You've got the actors who are trying to get their head around it. Like you said, Jo Martin's got a life, so she's not going to sit there and read 100 Doctor Who books and watch all of Doctor Who to try and get her head around it. So
or even know how we feel about it, because presumably she's probably met quite a few fans now. And obviously to go and meet an actor, a celebrity of some sort, generally speaking, I wouldn't go and meet somebody whose work I didn't like. It would be, well, first, it's a waste of my time, waste of theirs. So the people who she's going to meet are going to be responsive to what she did and her, and that's absolutely fine. But there's no reason why she should be aware of the broader arguments that are had within a fan base.
That's what I was going to say. If you're taking on the role as the Doctor, and that's quite, you're the leading person, then you would, of course, do as much research as you could. I know of previous actors who had dived into all of the whole show and watched, most of it and got their head into it and stuff like that. But for somebody like Jo Martin, who's appearing in the show in a very small amount of time, she was probably just given the broad strokes, and that's all you need to know, I guess, if you want to dive in, and so be it. But I think overall she was just given what she needed to act in that role for that little portion of time is what was given. So, but it's just I think it will come up all the time, mate. Every time there's a new Big Finish story with her, every time there's like, you know, a guest announcement that's coming up for a new series, people will predict it's probably her Doctor coming back. It won't be, but I think it will come up all the time, mate. Yeah.
It wraps it up on a not contentious subject at all.
As always.
Yes, it's always good to catch up, Garry. Yeah, I thought we're probably going to have a free and easy and quite a clean and light conversation. As it turns out, we've touched on some of the biggest topics in fandom too. But I know you've got to shoot now. We've got some more comments to get to. I'll get into some of these comments in a moment. And but yeah, thank you. Thank you for your time, Garry. It's good to have you back. If people want to find you and follow you, where can they find you?
Cheers, dude. Yeah, it's good to be back. And you can find me over at the Big Blue Box podcast. Just for searching your podcast apps or online for the Big Blue Box, you'll find us on there. And just a very quick plug. Sorry, Dan, we just started a new Blake 7 podcast as well. So if you're into Blake 7, do a search for Federation Strike, a Blake 7 podcast. Yeah.
And I do have, that will be this. So that's that, isn't it? That's what they've got to look for. There you go.
There you go. Yeah.
So wonderful stuff. You will be like us. You'll be converted into a Blake 7 fan in no time, Garry. I was thrilled to see that you started doing this, because I was a big Blake 7 fan here, and lots of people who watch Doctor Who are. There's a big crossover, isn't it? Yeah. Should be an interesting voyage for you out there into the realms of Blake 7. You have to let us know how you get on, and we'll be listening keenly to the new show. But yeah, that's that wraps it up. That wraps it up, I think.
Yeah, but
all right. Cheers, Garry. I'll catch you for the next round.
Indeedy. Cheers, buddy. Cheers, chat. I'll see you all soon.
Take care. Bye bye. And he's out. Okay. Thank you, everybody, for your messages. Yeah, Garry told me he'd only got a certain period of time, and I forgot. It's completely on me. Okay, so what have we got here? Thank you, everybody, for turning out for this. Jeanette Cranky in Ab Fab was hilarious. Says problem being, I agree. Mark asks, wasn't John Nathan Turner the reason that Tom Baker didn't return for the 20th anniversary? There were a cluster of reasons why Tom didn't come back for that, I'm afraid. I think that his relationship with J&T had turned somewhat sour, but I don't think it was the reason, if you follow me. I love the original Star Wars trilogy, says Ezra Goldstein. Who doesn't? Yeah. Chibnall's casting choices were woeful, says Bunch of Wallace. See, I, for the most part, I do agree. I do agree. I mean, you think the one I feel the most sorry for, I feel a little for Jo Martin. I've never met the lady. But you think, well, what? She probably isn't aware of this discussion and this debate, this controversy, if you like. And again, why should she? But the one I feel sorry for way, way more is this bloke. Imagine. So 1 year, you are a star of one of the biggest sitcoms on British TV, a real cultural phenomena, which spawns a couple of movies in the way that this fella was. And then a couple of years later, you're striding around in certainly one of the top 5 worst episodes of Doctor Who ever made with green hair. You think you've got problems? Adrian Sherlock says Whittaker's second season was the whole thing was a bloody train wreck. The second season was especially bad, though. Yeah, I couldn't believe every week it got worse. It was only on for 10 weeks. God, it felt like 10 years. We were doing the reviews on the podcast week on week then, and oh, God, it was soul destroying. Soul destroying. Yeah. Stephanie Barrett says, I can't agree. The scripts, stories, and characterization just weren't very good in the Whittaker era. So I think it'll stand out like a sore thumb in 20 years' time to most. To most, I agree with you, actually, Stephanie. I think to most, I think the drop in quality will be more than evident. But what I was saying is that there'll be a portion of people. There'll be a portion of people. The timeless children, absolute garbage. Oh, yeah, me mentioning that has doubled the audience for this show this afternoon. Thank you so much for the comments, everybody. We've got a hail from Matt Pott in the live chat too. Hi, Matt. Matt's been doing some IT work, haven't you? Doing a refit of the home base of the home stretch. What else is here? They were trying to make her the insignificant, aka Rassilon version of Joseph Goebbels, but then they screwed up the founding of Gallifrey, so it makes absolutely no sense, says PD Rich. I don't know. I don't understand that comment. Is it? Am I thick? Tom, is it just me? Maybe. Oh dear. Sir Sidney Rough Diamond speculates Jo was only used to drum up some controversy and get people talking. I do think that the actress was used up to a point. I sincerely do. I think she was tokenized. That's just my personal opinion, obviously. The inconsequential Doctor, says Matt Pott. The Zero Doctor, says Michael Q. I mean, I do agree with Adrian. You know, anybody who's been listening or watching to anything that's on under the Type 40 umbrella knows my feelings about this. The Doctor is a male character, a masculine character, and therefore 99.99999% of the time, the very best person to play that part will always be a man. The Doctor is a man. Adrian says there's something male about the Doctor, pretty much everything. The showing off, the dad jokes and puns, the way he drives his companions up the wall. I agree. It's so much. It's a very masculine character. Yeah. The rabbi says, I don't think Big Finish had a choice but to release the Joe Martin and Whittaker stories. It seems more of a BBC edict. I do know something about that, and I can't say. Oh, God. Oh, get me into all sorts of trouble. Oh, God. So lunchtime. I'm not taking chances this time of day. It won't be fair on Garry either. Oh, God. And that is why Joe Martin is not the Doctor, says problem being she's not earned it, let alone being the first. No, so that was something that's it's just ridiculous. Doesn't bear. Now we're a few years on from the episode airing, all the ridiculousness and how heightened it was, how antagonistic, how polluted the fandom was by that. We see it for what it is. Deliberately divisive bullshit. It's this pity that human beings get kind of dragged into it, really, isn't it? Because, you know, people with careers and people with feelings invest in a part. Avon lives, says Ezra Goldstein. Oh, dear. What else is here? Who is Tecteun? Says Michael. I get no idea. I didn't understand any of it. Woke is all about division and blame. Of course it is, says Adrian Sherlock. Yeah, so whilst I don't delight in sort of digging up old arguments like that, it had, you know, I had noticed that one had surfaced again. Is it part of silly season? I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe not. Okay, yes, I also want to give a belated happy birthday to one female Doctor, I think that the entire fandom does love. Most fandom loves. I remember there was a time where the most controversial thing in Doctor Who history that two Doctor Who fans could possibly debate was whether the Doctor was half human or not. Do you remember that? Simpler, happier times. I missed them. But yes, we did have this female Doctor. Well, that female Doctor, played by this lady. This is Daphne Ashbrook. Daphne celebrated her birthday over the weekend. Belated happy birthday to the fabulous Daphne Ashbrook. Look how beautiful she looks. So here she is, and she's representing to Doctor Who Podcast Day. Getting in there earlier than we have for DWPD 2025. So thank you, Daphne, for raising the flag there and reminding us that it will be Doctor Who Podcast Day again on August the 9th this year. And again, many happy returns to Daphne. Get her back. Get her back as Grace Holloway. Just once. How much would it cost, do you think? How much would it cost Big Finish just to get her just once to play that character? Special extension. Oh, thank you, Paul. PD Rich says, no, you're not thick, Dan. Thank you. I shall tell my children this. They'll be very relieved to hear the news. You're not thick, as Longbarrow is considered to be semi-canon. Yeah. God, I hated that book. It's absolute crap. But I know there are people who like it. It's not as offensive as The Timeless Children, to be fair. Avon Lives says it's a Goldstein, which always pops up until every time I mention Blake 7. Yes, so my thanks again to Gary there for joining me for this one, and everybody in the live chat too. We've had some fun, haven't we? I've confessed my growing crush on Bonnie Langford. I don't know where it's come from after all these decades. If you're out there, Bonnie, we love you. Olivia Colman as the Doctor. Michael Q. I like Olivia as well, but I've got no desire to see her as the Doctor. I've just finished watching her series of The Crown, and it's taken me a little longer because I thought Claire Foy was so fabulous. But eventually, I really did. I'm not a big Olivia Colman fan, but she was great as the Queen. Happy birthday, Daphne, says Ezra. Yeah, I think it was a couple of days ago now, but it's, let it pass, do we? Particularly with her representing Doctor Who Podcast Day like that. Very kind. Okay, yeah, what else? Another thing that's blipped onto the radar is the fact that when it comes to social media, everything sort of gets kicked up eventually, doesn't it? And the internet never forgets. That's the expression. Have any of you forgotten the Star Beast? The first of the 60th anniversary trilogy there from November into December, wasn't it? 2023. And nobody's forgotten this, of course they haven't. But what you may have forgotten was at the time, there was meant to be a big marketing push for Beep the Meep. And that didn't happen. They were expecting Beep T-shirts and keyrings and underpants and all that kind of thing. And it never happened. We saw prototypes for action figures based on several characters from the specials, didn't we? The Wrath Warriors and things like that. I've certainly never seen them in the shops. They've never appeared. And there was going to be, there was talk, well, Russell T Davies talked about it in Doctor Who magazine, how he intended on making plushy Beep the Meeps too. And people have been waiting. Well, I think most people have forgotten, to tell you the truth. But it's been mentioned to me several times in between. Well, it came out over the weekend that Al Dewar, who is the main guy, the character options Doctor Who guy, isn't he? I've never spoken to Al. I don't know Al. I don't know what he does, but he's very enthusiastic about the range, isn't he? He's been speaking about it. So here we are. As this comes from Doctor Who 5.5 figure mock-ups on X. And this was a close look at a prototype here for Beep the Meep plushie that was being developed, produced for character options to eventually sell on, obviously, hopefully to us. They wanted to flog them to us, didn't they? And it just looks very intricate, doesn't it? There's unmistakable. You can see that's definitely Beep's hand. And the eyeball there that Donna presses, doesn't she, when she finds Beep in the shed in that scene. Fabulous scene. You know, I quite like the episode myself. I only got a problem with about 2 scenes of it. This the main problem, of course, with this is that the enthusiasm for the character dropped off a cliff, didn't it, as soon as the episode aired? And the plushie, it had seemed to have vanished, along with the whole line of merchandise that was supposed to come off that. Well, Al Dwyer has been speaking about this. He's spoken to my mate Kenny Smith on the Power of 3 podcast. And so Al has said that the Beep the Meat plushie will now not be produced. And Kenny, being a proper journalist, very diligently asked him why this would be. And Al apparently said it's not why it's not happening is because there's very little interest from retailers at the time of when they were developing it. So it essentially snuffed it out. At that point, it was just not commercially viable. Is anybody surprised by this? But it is one of those things that when we're talking about Doctor Who and the impact of all new Doctor Who since this current production team took over, this is something that we've returned to several times. Now, is it going to turn up? It's definitely not coming. I haven't seen any of the other figures in shops either. Apparently, there's been a toy fair as well. That's where Al was doing the circuit with the toy fairs. But aside from a couple of crappy sonic screwdrivers, sorry, Al, but they're pretty crap, aren't they? Let's be honest. There's just nothing associated with the all-new era that's having any effect at all. Only the classic stuff that they put out, those fabulous Dalek sets and the various other sort of sets of 3. They're the only things that there seem to be any sort of conversation and excitement surrounding. But yeah, I know, again, it's silly season, so people have jumped all over this as well, simply because there's nothing else. I've not really got anything to add about it, really, other than the fact that acknowledging that this was unfinished business, people had wondered where it had gone, where that line of figures had gone, because, you know, if it had been successful, they'd have all kickstarted again, wouldn't they? It seems like it's simply not happening after all. So sorry, all you Beep the Meat fans out there, it looks like you're not going to get your plushie anytime soon. We didn't get it last Christmas. You're not going to get it this Christmas either. You have to make your own. Somebody will be doing them on Etsy, won't they? There we are. Rob is doing his best to forget the Star Beast. What is the Star Beast, says Michael Q. Beep the Meep was the Star Beast. Beep the Meep. I've forgotten it on purpose, says PD Rich. So that about covers it for this one. Yeah, it's what next? What next? Heaven knows. More of these daytime streams here. Thanks, Dan. Look forward to Thursday. I like Thursday, the day after Wednesday. Big fan of Thursdays. Means the weekend is nearly on the way. Couldn't agree more. Obviously, more coming from us at Type 40 later on in the week. Podcasts, live streams, and all manner of other hijinks and general all-round naughtiness, right? Yeah. She's in. Romana's in. And thank you for all the comments, everybody. Thank you for the comments, everybody. Problem being, would rather have a Yeti plushie. Who wouldn't? Couldn't agree more. Adrian says the Whittaker merchandise didn't sell, apparently. No, it killed off the merchandise immediately. And it nearly killed off Doctor Who Publishing as well. Poor old Titan Comics. Absolute disaster for them. They were publishing about 4 different regular monthly comic books, weren't they? And miniseries and all sorts of things. All of it disappeared because of Chris Chibnall and Jodie Whittaker. So yes, leave you with the question for this one, I think, for this lunchtime. Season 2 of Doctor Who is coming in the next 2 to 3 months, we think. Just the other side of Easter would be when I would expect it. What I want to know from you is, we've seen a few pictures already. We've got some idea. But there's going to be 8 episodes in that. We've got to work out which of the village people do you think the Doctor will be dressed as in that season? Let us know in the comments. And we're going to sort of tick list. We'll tick them off as the weeks and months are going off. Well, I'm sure that by the time he's finished in the role, he'll have cosplayed as all 6 of them. That's it for this one. Thank you for all the comments, everybody. My thanks, as ever, to Garry. Find Garry at the Big Blue Box, and a Federation Strike and everything that they've got going on over there. And we'll see you on the next one. Enjoy the rest of your day. Bye-bye. We'll see you in the comments.